Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on mental health and everyday perspective. It's one of the series of webinars being brought to you by the TUC West Midlands Combined Authority Partnership, and also our new project up in the Sheffield City region. Now, if you're a regular attender, you'll recognise me. My name's Matt Pointon. I run the project in the West Midlands, and I'll be hosting this, but I'm not alone today. So before we do anything else, I am going to introduce my two comrades on the screen. So firstly, as I look at things, the lady in the centre, I don't know if it's the same on your screen, is Janet. So Janet, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I will do. My name's Janet Johnson, and I'm the TUC Skills Project Officer for South Yorkshire. It's the Merrow Combined Authority area that I cover. So as Matt said, Sheffield City region.
Excellent, and nice to have you with us, Janet. And Janet, I think we'll be seeing more of now that project's really getting established and doing some great work there up in Sheffield. We return to Janet in a bit, but before we do, as I see things, the lady on the far left is Jane. So, Jane, do you want to tell people who you are?
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Jane Warwick, and I'm one of the directors of SpeakUp Mental Health. Many of you might recognise me, as I used to work for Union Learn until March last year. So it's great to be back with former colleagues and with you all. I'm already recognising so many names there in the chat. And thanks for inviting me, Matt.
No problem. It's always good to see you, Jane, even albeit digitally. Now, of course, that's us three, but the webinar is nothing without everybody else. So if you haven't done already, pop your names in your name and your union and where you are. Like Jane said, there's lots we recognise. So I'm just going to go through. We've got Worcestershire, very nice. London Unemployed Strategies. Hi, Maria. Norman. Hi. Yes, I recognise that name. University of Hull. So we're getting people from all over the country here. Manchester, Sheffield, Merseyside, Community. I used to be a rep for Community. Hello. Scarborough, Unison, Northern Region, Norwich, Cherry from Community. So Edinburgh, lots. Unison, West Midlands. Hi, Linda again. No, you've come to lots of ours before. So lots going on there. Brilliant. I will come back to that later. Before we do, I'm going to shamelessly plug some things. So if you are in the West Midlands, or indeed the Midlands as a whole, because we cover the whole of the Midlands, we have a ULR forum. Please try and attend. They're always really good. This time, for the first time ever, we are attempting to do it in person. So we are going to be in Coventry at CWU's office. It's on the 8th of April. And if you're interested in going to that, email Michelle Kesterton. I'm popping her email in the chat now, and she can connect you on, put you on the list. If you'd like to come, but you can't come in person, we're doing it with CWU because they've got the facilities to do hybrid meetings, so you can still attend digitally. So please come along anyway. But if you can come in person, all the better. So that's on the 8th of April. And also another thing that you should know is obviously this webinar is part of a series. We do them every month, and our next one is actually it's a little over a month because of Easter, and we haven't got the exact date yet, but it's either going to be on the 4th or the 5th, and we're doing a webinar in conjunction with the Royal Literacy Fund. So I think that should be quite good, and I think it will tie into what we're doing here, because they talk about, writing for confidence, writing to improve your mental health, that kind of stuff. So I think that should be really something interesting. Janet, do you have any events going on up in Yorkshire that people might be interested in?
Yes, we have. We've got a ULR forum as well. That's actually being held in Hull, and it's at the Holiday Inn Conference Centre. That's on the 22nd of April from 11:45. If you want more information about that, it's on the YNH regional webpage, and you can register to join us there. But please come along. It should be quite interesting. There'll be an update on the work that we're doing right across Yorkshire and the Humber region, but also on the project I'm working on. And although I say it's Sheffield City region, it is South Yorkshire. So that covers Barnsley, Rotherham and Doncaster, as well as Sheffield as well. But we've got information on mental health. We've got mind attending. We've got some new information from Just Transition about green issues. We've also got an illustrator and an author who will be present, and they'll be running a session for us as well. So it should be a really good event. So please come along.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Janet. Sounds rather good. Okay, so we're going to get stuck into this because I think this is a really popular topic. And I mean, we've got 250 people registered for this. I think the most we've had since we restarted these. So mental health, a really big thing. So I'm going to hand over to the expert, Jane. Tell us what we need to know. Oh, but while Jane's talking, if you get any questions that come up, we've got the ask a question function at the bottom of the page. You just click on there and you can type your question in, or type it in the chat and Yusuf will spot it and he can put it in there. Okay, Jane, over to you.
Thank you, Matt. I hope that you can see PowerPoint presentation. Have you got? Is the window showing, Matt?
It is.
Lovely. So as Matt kindly introduced me, I'm Jane Warwick and I'm one of the directors, and I'm also a mental health instructor. And this is only a very, very short PowerPoint, just really to set the scene, as it were, for this session. So SpeakUp Mental Health, as I said, it was developed and launched back in the sort of spring, summer of last year, following the redundancy period, because as I said, I used to work at Union Learn. So it's great to be back seeing you all, albeit via a crowdcast webinar. And just to say that both Ian and myself run the company, and that's Ian Borkett. He used to be the manager in the services section of Union Learn, and we're both qualified mental health instructors. Really, we set up the company because there was such a high demand for mental health, which we had seen and we were delivering through Union Learn, and we really wanted to carry on with that work. What I'd like to do is just to kind of start off with a story, or to talk about Yasmin. And this is a young lady that I met quite recently, and she's experienced a period in her life where her mental health deteriorated, and it took her to a very, very dark place, and she became fixed on her body image, her weight, food. And despite Yaz's best efforts, she just really couldn't get control, and her weight plummeted to around 30 kilos, or, you know, for those of us who work still in stones and pounds, that's sort of just under 5 stone. And sort of her mental health and her physical health were really deteriorating. And she was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. And what happened was Yasmin's family intervened and took her abroad, and they all stayed there supporting her and each other for around 4 months. And what she said was she will always be in recovery. But what this picture that you see on your screen now is showing is part of the artwork that Yasmin has started to work on, which has helped with her recovery. And while she says, you know, she's always going to be in recovery, she believes that for her, art therapy really, really helped, and the support of her friends and her family. And her artwork just really helps her to interpret her inner feelings and thoughts. So the kind of message that I'm trying to portray is that with the right help and support, even with extreme examples like I've just been sort of talking about, people can and do recover from mental health issues. it may not be to the same particular place in life that they were before, but a meaningful and functional life is achievable. So I just wanted to say a little bit about Yasmin, and I'm just going to kind of move on to mental health in the workplace. And, you know, as reps, we are experienced at tackling members' issues. From learning needs to health and safety, collective bargaining, individual cases. And we come from a place of support and fairness, which kind of makes sense why we're here talking today and why Union Learn have put this webinar on for everybody. Also, we come from a place of confidentiality. So it's no wonder that people speak to reps about mental health issues. And just say there is some, I've listed sort of some support that is there in the workplace on the screen, but there is so much more there. I haven't mentioned the Equality Act, but mental health issues are covered under the Equality Act 2010, but there's issues that people are really kind of thinking about now, returning to the workplace if they've been working remotely at home, current affairs, but also, we want to know more about what's going on in the workplace. Are there employee assistance programs? What's there to support? Do the policies and the policies and procedures, do they work? Do they need reviewing? So there's a lot of conversation going on. And also, we want to find out more about union support. What's there to help you? And self-care has never been so much more important. And I think particularly as reps, other people bring issues to you, you negotiate on their behalf, you support people. Well, self-care is important to everybody, but I really do feel that particularly for reps. And I just want to really kind of emphasize that mental health issues are common in the workplace. I've just listed a few there. This is not a sort of a restricted list. I'll just sort of throw a few numbers out there. 1 in 10 of us are experiencing anxiety, 1 in 10 depression, mixed anxiety, depression, again 1 in 10. Postnatal depression impacts on between 8 and 15% of women. OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder, around 3% of people are affected. Phobias as well, that's between 1 and 3%. And it's becoming more and more. And panic and anxiety attacks are probably one of the most common things that people are talking about in the workplace. And I'm sure these are issues that we're going to be coming back to whilst we carry on with the webinar. But just to say, Business in the Community, and this was before the pandemic, released some data. And as you can see on the screen there, 85% of managers felt that their employees' well-being is their responsibility, but only 30% of them had taken part in mental health training of some description. So there's a big gap there in what is available and what could be made available. As you can also see, 30% report having no workplace facilities or services that could help mental health and well-being. So that's, there's a huge scope for work for us and for everybody, really. And 16% of employees felt able to disclose mental health issues to a manager. And that kind of comes back to sort of barriers and why people aren't talking, because I think for a trade union movement, we need to normalise conversations about mental health. And I think it'll really help us to address things going forward and to support people. I'm going to stop there because I know we've got a lot to cover, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions coming in. But that's how you can contact us. That's my contact details, and Ian's, our website, our Facebook group. So if anyone is interested or is already supporting mental health in any capacity, please join our Facebook group. It's a closed group. Yeah, I'll come back. I'll stop sharing my screen now because I'm sure as I've been talking, there's been questions coming in. So just bear with me and I'll close this down. There we go. Stop sharing. There was quite a lot of information there, Matt, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. I mean, there's a few things that interested me. Before I go on about that, Matt Gillett has talked about what Unite are doing, a mental health support service for all reps. So that might be something that, you know, if you're a Unite person or you, Jane, might be interested in.
Yeah.
Barry has said, I'm a mental health ambassador at my company and union representative for Usdaw within every, formerly known as Hermes, and been dealing with many issues. I mean, I know he's here today, but he hasn't put in the chat. But our Dual Forum chair, Steve Croak, he's with CWU, and he talked to me about the amazing work they've done with mental health first aiding with Royal Mail managers. And, you know, it says that only 30% have had mental health training. Well, Royal Mail have changed that. And they've done it with the union, which I think is a really positive story. One thing that struck me is, you know, you said that 3% of people are affected by OCD. One thing that annoys me is so many people go, oh, I'm a bit OCD. Oh, that's my OCD and all that, as if it's a joke thing. And actually, it's a real condition that can debilitate lives. And yet, how many of us are, oh yeah, just a bit OCD, I like my pens in the line kind of thing, as if it's not an important thing. So that's that. Anne, I don't know if you see, this is Anne Galpin has asked about captions. Now, Yusuf has put a reply to you in there. We can't do the captions on here, but what we do is record this and put it on our YouTube channel. So there will be captions then. Really sorry about that.
Matt, sorry, just to jump in, I have put in a bit of a stopgap solution if you're using Chrome as well, which I've just tested now and it does work. So that is there if people want live captions. It's just changing a setting in your Chrome advanced settings. So I've put that in the, I've answered the question there.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that. But, you know, a good question there. Thanks, Anne. Yeah, we've got a few comments here. Steve, who I've just been talking about, says it's worth noting at last week's Inside Out Mental Health Awards, the CWU won 2 awards. So they've been recognised. That's great. And Emma always calls out the OCD comments. Good. Thank you. Okay, what we're going to do now, Jane, we're going to ask you some questions. We're going to ask them in the first person. It's not actually me that's asking the question, but I'm going to ask it in the first person. It was asked to us. And Janet, would you mind if we take turns? And
no, that's fine. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So the first question we have is, as a line manager, I would like to increase awareness of employee emotional and mental health support and prevent stress in the workplace. So what can I do? As a line manager. So this is from the managerial perspective.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of things that can be done. And, you know, sort of I think it was the slide before the last, I talked about some of the stats around line managers not being offered training. So, I mean, something that really sort of jumps out is about getting people trained and encouraging training. You know, the TUC Education, they run a mental health in the workplace course for reps. And there are line managers courses. We run line managers course. I will shamelessly plug that we run them. And it actually came from requests from the trade unions. They were asking about whether we did line management and managerial training, which we did because, you know, we're all talking about it. It is become, you know, the topic is being spoken about more and more, but it's kind of understanding and thinking about what you can do because, you know, with line management, you assume that people know what the procedures are, but things have changed. We've just lived through 2 years of a pandemic. Are the policies and the procedures still the same? And what we do, we tend to tailor or to deliver bespoke courses that incorporate what's available in the workplace. Is there an employee assistance program? As a line manager, how often are you speaking to your colleagues, the workforce that you're sort of line managing? Are those discussions open? And I think, there's a lot of barriers because people, even now, I think people are still afraid to say, I'm kind of trying to live with a mental health issue or a mental health illness, despite, legislation, despite the conversations. People still feel that. So I think one of the things that I would love to see is, mental health conversations just becoming the norm. And it was actually a TUC colleague that said to me when she came to the UK, she didn't understand, but people used to say, oh, how are you? And carry on walking. And she felt really kind of insulted because in her home country, if somebody said to you, how are you doing? You would stop and have a conversation. And this is something that quite often we don't do. So language is a big thing. And, we talk about people that do maybe talk about stress. They'll say, oh, I'm feeling quite stressed, but they're not as open to say, I'm experiencing a mental health condition, or, my mental health isn't so good at the moment. But we will say, oh, we're feeling stressed. But just to kind of come back and think about, for the line manager, what support's already there? The unions are there. We've just heard how many different unions are winning awards. They're setting up mental health structures. It's being incorporated into their union structures. Line managers could speak to the trade unions and they could, learn what resources are there. They could carry out mental health surveys to see how their staff are feeling. They could be, confidential. They don't have to put their name to it. They could run mental health sessions. They could invite people in, just as you have for your network meetings, to come in and talk. And I mean, if a line manager or a union rep, actually, there was quite a good resource that was developed under the heading of midlife and older workers. And I'm not plugging it because I was involved in that work. But if you take away the midlife element and swap it for mental health, there is some fantastic resources in the Getting Active publication that will really help to start these kind of conversations. And of course, as I say, there's training out there. It can be done informally. If you're still working on Zoom and online meetings, you could have a break and have coffee mornings, or you could, get people going out walking at lunchtime, or, organising events just to kind of get people talking about mental health and making the sort of connection that it's all about our mental health. And we can't have physical health without mental, good mental health, and vice versa. It's a really important I could go on forever about it, actually, Matt, but I'll stop there because I'm sure there's more that you want to add.
I think it's true. And, how many people, nobody feels shame to say, oh, I've broken my leg, I've broken my arm. But when it's mental health, there's like this stigma, isn't it? And it can be just the same. It can be a temporary thing that's happened because of something you've been involved with, just like breaking your leg. Anyway, Janet, before you go on, an interesting comment here about Roger Layton. We need to have better communication with regional TUC with workplace stewards and reps. Well, I don't know which region you're in, Roger, but if you're in either the Midlands, drop me a line, because I'm based in the Midlands. And if you're in Yorkshire, drop Janet a line. Because if you're elsewhere, we can sort something out. Because if we need to get better at communicating, we'll make sure it happens. So
yeah, can I just come in there as well, please? Just to reiterate really what Jane said, and also to just to comment on Roger's comment, if you like, really. I've actually recently been in this post since November, but one of the things I have done is sent out a survey to unions, all the unions in my area, South Yorkshire, asking them what the top 5 skills and learning needs are for their members, so that we can take that area forward. And 84% came back and said mental health awareness. And then when we looked at expanding it, a lot of the stuff you've said, Jane, they were talking about stress and anxiety awareness. That was quite high up, but also looking at some of the underlying causes of some of that stress and anxiety. So money management, they were interested in that, and gambling and alcohol awareness and that sort of stuff. But interestingly, it also came up about training for managers. That was a big one, and that was commented on a lot, and also so that the managers can support their staff. So they are areas that we're aware of, and certainly I know Matt's working with the unions in his region, as am I, and their areas will definitely be taken forward. But if there's anything else that anybody comes up with, please get in touch.
Yeah, Roger's in Northern, so I can have a chat with the people in Northern, but Anne has put about working through your disabled workers structure and getting involved with the TUC Disabled Workers Conference. So that could be something we could look at, actually. It's a good idea. Yeah. Anyway, Janet, please.
Yes, next question for Jane. And I can relate to this one. Life is slowly returning to normal after the pandemic. So why do I feel scared, anxious, and overwhelmed still? And, just to give you an example, really, this is from my personal experience, working at home and being, in lockdown, etc., and then going back out into the world. And the thing I found I was really anxious about was travel. And it's travel on public transport. And it's that kind of thing. What do we do? What's the norm? There's notices saying wear masks, but nobody's wearing a mask. What do I do? Oh, somebody's a bit too close to me. Are they going to cough on me? Are they going to... And that increased my level of anxiety. Things I'd never thought about before the pandemic.
Yeah. No, I mean, the first thing I'd say is it's natural and normal, common for everybody to feel overwhelmed at some point. And, it's hardly surprising, is it? And I think all the things that you've mentioned, Janet, the restrictions started to become relaxed, but then the next day, reporting on the war in the Ukraine intensified. But we know that we're still living with the pandemic, and I think it's one in 16 in England and Wales. I think it's 1 in 11 in Scotland, and around 1 in 17 in Northern Ireland. People have got or are carrying, the coronavirus. So it hasn't gone away, and you've got all of these issues on top of people's personal issues, all the sort of individual factors and social factors. So, I mean, the first thing is, it's hardly surprising that people are overwhelmed. They're concerned about social gatherings, traveling during the pandemic, like you said. Some people have, very recently, somebody said, they've got this that feeling of guilt because they never gave their parent the funeral that they wanted to give them because it happened during the pandemic. So there's loads of issues that are putting pressure on people. So I think the first thing, it's hardly surprising, but also try not to be too harsh on yourself. You're not alone. There are other people feeling and experiencing the same things. And also there's a lot of help and support because, we kind of touched on stress, and stress is kind of a normal, natural reaction. It's a chemical reaction, but if stress continues, it can lead to anxiety. So here, I'm not sure the individual is sort of talking. There's a feeling of anxiety, and then there's sort of experiencing anxiety attacks and panic attacks. And if that's the case, I would definitely sort of encourage those people to speak to somebody, whether that's medical profession, friends or family, somebody at work, their employee assistance programs, their personnel departments. But I don't think people should be, hard on themselves. They've had a lot to contend with. And continuous studies have reported that mental health issues have risen over the last 2 years. So, you know, I can't sort of emphasize enough, you're not alone in feeling like this. And, you know, some people are returning to the workplace now and have been working from home. They've had, you know, I suppose the old journey into work is probably the best, you know, stopping, if you're using, you know, trains, not being able to contact people in the office, you know, people wearing masks, not wearing masks. What's the sort of the ruling on it now? You know, certainly on the London Underground, there's signs everywhere that you should still be wearing a mask. But, you know, I've travelled in London recently and not everyone, you know, has. But, you know, there are so many factors that impact. I think it's only natural to feel scared and anxious and overwhelmed. And just to say, you know, people will react very, very differently. And in terms of coping mechanisms, what works for one person may not work for another. I've heard of people switching off their social media just for a short while, or not listening to the news so that they can concentrate on themselves. And, you know, I know I mentioned it earlier on, self-care, and I'm sure we'll come on to it, you know, again and again. It's so important to look after yourself because there are so many factors, you know. When you think about people's living conditions, you know, their wages, you know, increase in fuel bills, utility bills, you know, there is a lot. But just remember that stress itself is a natural response, and it relates to sort of the flight, fight, or freeze, which is a sort of response to potential danger. So a little bit of stress is okay, but if it becomes too much, then it's time to start talking. And there's lots of literature out there from the trade unions on stress and stress management. There's a lot of websites, you know, Stress UK, Anxiety UK, you know, and actually Anxiety UK has a helpline, and I do know their number, which I'll pop into the chat at some point, or I'll pop it over to you. And of course, you know, there's always the NHS websites. So it kind of just in brief, it is a natural response, and it's hardly surprising.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. And just in the chat, Labour Research Department are here, and they've put a link to their guide, and they do some actually really useful publications. So anybody who's been to congresses or conferences will have come across them, and they're well worth looking at what they do. Few things. Claire's talked about a really a terrible situation that she's been through, and kind of, you know, the manager who was really unsympathetic there. He's still in charge. What do you do to change the dynamic about that? I mean, I don't think there's an easy answer. I think the company should be a bit more proactive with that. But to me, it's about getting the union to talk about it, because it's clearly not acceptable what happened to her there. You know, and thanks for sharing that story, because that must have been quite hard to go through, I'm sure. Okay, I've got another question. We have got 5 in the chat as well, so we're going to be here for a while, I think. But mine is, I am struggling to pay my energy bills, and food shopping has gone through the roof. On top of that, the war in Ukraine has got me really anxious and stressed. What can I do to stop these feelings?
Well, I think it kind of leads really well from the question that we've sort of like just been discussing, and I can fully empathise with everybody who finds themselves in this situation. You know, we're just about to see the biggest hike in fuel bills, and I think October we see a sort of a round 2 of that. I'm not going to pretend in any way, shape, or form to be a finance expert, and I think you mentioned earlier on, Matt, about sort of managing budgets and managing debt, and sort of organisations that are there to sort of help with that. For me, I would say start to talk to people. if you feel that you're not going to be able to cover bills, start to speak to people at the earliest opportunity, even if you're sharing it with a partner or a family member, so that you can gain some control, because being in control will really help. And there is a lot of advice services. I mean, the Money Advice Service jumps to mind, and they have both a helpline and a website. But sometimes your bank will give you financial support. A lot of trade unions give support around finances and pensions. And just popping back to the Money Advice Service, we used to run sessions when I worked at Union Learn, and we used to use their budgeting tools and their calculators. But I think it doesn't it will help people budget. But I think what we're seeing here with the energy bills is, it hitting yet again the most vulnerable in society, the people that are just about making ends meet. And, I've never known increases in utility bills like it. We know from week to week when we're buying our shopping that, all those prices are going up. And, for some people, this is going to be the choice between eating and heating, isn't it? There's some real sort of worries. And, in terms of sort of what you can do, I suppose, to try and de-stress, we do promote things like taking time out for yourself. It's not going to address any money issues or the threat of war, but actually investing some time in yourself can help, and maybe help you put some perspective and feel more in control, and have the strength to actually have a look at what is causing issues, and whether it's finances, whether there's gambling. And the things that we kind of promote is taking time to unwind. And I think this is really important for reps, because not only do they have all the social and individual sort of stress factors, but they also take on a lot. And some people that were reps and have left, because it is kind of an organising issue, is about the caseload and the workload and feeling overwhelmed. So in terms of sort of retention of reps, I think it's really important that we encourage wellbeing as much as we can. And just, as I say, just come back, taking time to unwind, thinking about those things and interests that you did have, connecting with people and talking. I really can't emphasize enough the power of talking. And sometimes, pick up the phone. We tend to sort of, oh, I haven't spoke to Matt for a little while, I'll send him a text. But actually speaking to people, can be a real stress reliever. And sometimes, if you want somebody else's opinion, we all have friends that will be happy and willing to give their opinion. But and also, being more active within your capabilities, getting out, taking in some fresh air, not sitting in front. We had our sort of working worlds change, didn't we, during the lockdown? And we're all equally as guilty of sitting in front of the laptops for hours on end. And just sort of getting out and about and sort of looking around what's going on, paying more attention to the present, I suppose. And that kind of links to sort of mindfulness. And I know you've done a lot on mindfulness, Matt, but mindfulness can help people really enjoy life more by taking notice, isn't it? And being mindful of both themselves and sort of what's going on around. And of course, coming from Union Learn, I'd be wrong not to mention the learning aspect, whether that's learning more about anxiety or learning more about finances, or, just learning in general, whether it's a YouTube video or listening to a podcast or, a talking book. But things to really help boost your confidence so that you can feel in a good place to actually cope with
Mhm.
these external stresses that are being put on you by all the sort of media, the negative media, the energy bill rises, and the war, anything that can help you. And I'll finish with, I can't stress enough how important self-care is, because if you don't look after yourself, it's really, really hard then to support others and to help others.
Yeah, and following on for some of the stuff you said there, I mean, you did talk about going to your bank as money support. Karen has put the banks are worse at supporting. I mean, one of the things we found when we did that is that actually some people don't trust their banks. But if you don't trust the bank, there are people like the Money Advice Service who are impartial. So, but I'm not knocking what the banks do. But if you don't feel you can trust them, that is somewhere you can go. Also, I mean, the talking to people. A friend of mine came out with a brilliant comment yesterday when I met him, and somebody had asked him what was his favourite social media, and he said face to face. And actually, it's true. And I want to go back to the Ukraine war thing, because it is very easy to get upset about some of the stuff that's happening, and it's very easy to get worried. Are they going to stop there? Are they going to invade further? And all this, and going on social media doesn't help, because a lot of it's sensationalized. And also be careful what media read, because a lot of it is there for clickbait. It's there to shock. And either stay away from all of it, or go on some more balanced media where it's actually, it tells you what's happening rather than the shock horror stories, because they can. I find myself, I have to step away from social media after a while, because you can get into spats with people, and it's really not healthy at all. So there's that. I'm just having a quick look through, because we've had loads of comments. I mean, who's this? Matt Gillett has put a big challenge for unions now that the government's essentially stepped back from any COVID precautions. And Linda's put about representatives are putting many members, and it's impacting on their sickness absence, which is then that can add to more stress, and they're hiding their struggles. You did mention gambling, and some people turn to gambling as a way of coping with stress, or also, well, maybe I can win the lottery or whatever and sort those money problems out. Gambling, most of the time is only going to make it worse. And I do know that Unite have been doing stuff around problem gambling courses, which if you're a Unite member, but I do know they want to share it with other unions as well. So that might be something worth looking at and promoting. And finally, and there is loads, I mean, someone just put about yoga and that. I always find laughter is the best medicine, and, because it does release chemicals which can help you. And we've promoted laughter yoga in the past, but even just taking some time out to have a jolly good chuckle, it can be really good. Janet, you have a question.
I do. I've trained as a mental health first aider and would now like to start to promote mental health awareness in the workplace, but I have no clue where to start in terms of locating resources, etc.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. I mean, as you both know, and as I said at the beginning, one of the courses that we deliver is mental health first aid. And there is so much out there. There really is, and I think we've already touched on some of it, with the trade unions, and what mental health resources they have that are on their websites. You can download them. But for me, when I first trained as a mental health first aider, the first thing that we did, we put posters up promoting who we were and how to contact us. And we put them somewhere that was really accessible, next to the photocopying machines. We put them on notice boards as well. Excuse me. Excuse me. Just to let people know that we were there. And then we started to sort of get involved in national campaigns. So we would use workplace issues, and it would be on sort of like Mental Health Awareness Day. And we would sort of arrange a selection of activities, whether it was a quiz or whether it was a walk, because being in central London at that time, we met outside Congress House and we went on some walks visiting, I would say, landmarks related to the suffragettes, but we also did other ones that were around blue plaques. So it might be worth finding something that may not initially strike people as being related to mental health, but actually getting out and walking, learning something new about a particular topic. So, you know, find out what's out there. I also pulled together sort of a working group of the mental health first aiders, and we used to meet and discuss what we were going to sort of work on, but we always linked that to the RJNC, so the union reps. So if there was anything that was coming up, because we did have one-to-one support as well. So if people came to us and they wanted to talk about a specific issue, we would give them the support that we could. And I suppose our role is about signposting. So those resources that the question is sort of linking to, we would use or give people resources, because I'm not an expert in mental health in terms of medical support, but I can signpost, I can tell you where there are you know, links to organisations that are experts in gambling or anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, I've got a lot of resources. And so what I would say is, if as a mental health first aider, who's there to support you? Is there a group of you? And what can you deliver? And I think you mentioned earlier on, Matt, you know, in terms of sort of what support is there from trade unions with Unite, because they've I've noticed that they've got a guide for reps and negotiators on mental health. And then you've also got Unison. They've got mental health learning for reps, and I know that they're offering reps mental health first aid training. Their next course is on the 26th of April, I think. And Laos, the Laos team at Unison, you know, you look at GMB and they're offering the level 1, but even back to what's on the Union Learn website, and the link with the Skills Network. Oh, excuse me. They've got free courses for sort of like level 2 awareness of mental health problems, the certificate in self-harm and suicide, and there's level 2 for children and young people's mental health. There's a lot more, but I suppose for the mental health first aider, find out what is available. Start to compile a list of resources and support. And sometimes you learn about what resources are out there because somebody's asked you a question, and you kind of think, oh, I should know that. So, you know, you go and find out, or you help them find out, because, you know, people being in control of what they're looking at, what will work for them, you know. I think with mental health, the person is always at the centre of any support and any kind of recovery model. They have to be, because it's their mental health. Do you know? But promote the wellbeing agenda. You know, promote conversations and webinars like this. You know, it was open to anybody that wanted to come along. So promote these kind of discussions so that people do get more confident talking about mental health. Because I think the first time you actually ask somebody, you know, are you feeling okay, it takes a lot of confidence. And, you know, mental health first aiders are trained, and they're more, I suppose, reactive. Just as reps are, because, you know, you're encouraged through case studies and, you know, role play to kind of ask people, are you feeling okay? So yeah, just really compile the resources. I don't know if I actually mentioned it earlier on. I mentioned the course that the TUC Education runs about mental health in the workplace. Now, the workbook for that is downloadable for free. It's on the TUC website. So that might be, you know, another resource that you can pull into your toolkit of resources. Inviting people. You both mentioned your events that are coming up. that you've got speakers from external organisers. There's nothing to stop a mental health first aider inviting somebody in from an outside organisation to talk about mental health, or gambling, or the menopause, or whatever it is. It could be a lunch and learn session. It could just be putting literature out. But there's so much out there, and on top, you've got all this online, which sort of really boosted, didn't it, during lockdown, and things moved online. Online meditation sessions, the laughter. Actually, Matt, I think it's about time you ran another laughter therapy session, isn't it? It must be. But yeah, there's so much, and I think one tip: don't get overwhelmed. One thing at a time.
Yeah. Well, what I will say, Jane, it doesn't have to be me who can run it, because I think Janet is qualified as well.
Yeah.
So it could be a double billing, that one. Okay. What I am going to do now, I'm putting in this chat a link to Future Learn courses. They've done a few. Also, Coursera are quite good. So I did the Demystifying Mindfulness one from Leiden University, and some from it's an Australian university, and I thought they were quite helpful. We've got Maria has put about when the black dog descends, it is pretty hard to do things. Now, if that sounds a bit confusing, that's in reference to a book, isn't it? That likens, I think it's depression to a dog that's sitting on you, and it's quite powerful. And I don't have the link to that, unfortunately, but if you're interested in that, it might be worth reading that. And Maria, if you know the name of that, it would be great. I think it's called Black Dog, but I'm not sure.
There used to be a video on YouTube,
Yes,
and it was called Black Dog. It used to be used in the mental health first aid training, but they've moved away from using that video now. But it also has connections, because I think it was Winston Churchill. He used to refer to his dark days as the Black Dog as well.
Right. So Anne's put about substance addiction is another hidden issue.
Absolutely.
I mean, definitely. And I mean, I used to work with homelessness support, and, substance addiction, fed into economic issues, which fed into losing your home, which fed into ill health, which fed into substance addiction. So it became this cycle. It was horrendous. Very little about mental health support for people who are neurodivergent. That's true. Good comment there, Emma. We do have an expert on neurodiversity. I might ask her about that, because I think I don't have an answer for that one, but that's good now. GMB Redbridge, they're talking about the sickness policy. Usdaw have some booklets as well. Get loads of comments. I won't go through them all, because there's so many. There's so many in there, but we do have 5 questions, and we only have 8 minutes. So I'm going to go through these. Jane, I am a freelancer working in lots of different settings. What suggestions do you have for support and strategies for self-employment? And Alison and Anne have also they've added some comments on this as well, so which may have partly answered it. But do you have anything to say there?
I think what we covered in the sort of the self-care is very, very sort of relatable, or for people that are self-employed, because they haven't got the support structure of the other people in say like a typical sort of office environment, or and so it is really important that they take self-care seriously. I think that was probably covered in terms of sort of, because what we spoke about is kind of across the board, but just to highlight, it is more important when you haven't got that immediate structure behind you. So finding out what resources are there, and it may be a peer or somebody that knows you well. There are a lot of local groups, and I've not worked with the Hub of Hope, but I will give a shout out to them, because they are on their website. They have a huge amount of support organisations. So you literally go on, tap in your postcode, and it tells you what is available there, from things mental health, stress, anxiety, to issues with gambling, to issues around LGBT groups. There'll be there's so much there, and if you tap in, it will tell you what's there in your local sorry, that's my dog. The local area. Just sort of thought it'd share his voice as well. Get a pet, that's another one, isn't it? We refer to Milo, my dog, as our stress animal, because we got him during lockdown, from I've forgotten, I can't think, dog rescue centre. So yeah, it's another thing. But yeah, the Hub of Hope, try it out. Really, really good links on that website.
Yeah. Marcus has just asked about, will there be recording of this? This webinar, as with all of them, will appear on our YouTube channel. So that's there. Quick one. Do you have a mental health survey to share? That's a question from Vicky. There is an answer that Barry says Usdaw has one, which I have used. I mean, Barry, if you want to send that to us, if Usdaw are happy with that, that would be great. But do you have one, Jane, or Yusuf or Janet? Do you know of one that the TUC has?
I do have one in a hard copy, which I could quite easily sort of type up the questions and send them over. They've tended to stay online, and the reason for that is because of different considerations. And I'll just give you a very brief example of that. With people now returning to work, there's things that we maybe didn't consider before. We've spoke about the wearing of masks, the fact that timetables for transport might have changed. There's so much. It might be about people are feeling anxious because their appearance has changed. They might have gained weight, lost weight. They may not have got to the gym and kept their physique trimmed. It may be that, I don't know, the hair isn't. There's so much that some of them used to have, I felt anxiety, I felt depression, and now it's moving towards sort of things like the concerns I have around returning to work, physical appearance, my physical health, my mental health, with sort of little added bullet points to like specific things. So I have got something that's quite general, but I would say, if people really want to get to the bones of what concerns people have, and the likelihood is, once people start talking about it, they'll realise that other people in the room or other people on the webinar or the Zoom meeting have experienced the same anxieties or very similar anxieties.
Yeah, the NHS used to have a stress indicator test that was quite good. I don't know the link. If anyone else could find the link, it'd be good. But that I've recommended in the past, and I've used that, and I thought that was quite good. But I'm going to rush through these questions. I have some signed off work by doctor, but he doesn't want to go off work. He only wants to get SSP. What else can I advise him to? That's Gary. Madeline has, partly answered that. But is there any additional advice you could give Barry?
So, sorry, could you just run that one past me again, Matt? I didn't quite.
So there's somebody in the workplace that has been signed off from work by the doctor, but he doesn't want to go off work as he only gets statutory sick pay. So basically, there's a poverty issue there. What help can I advise him to?
I mean, if it's a mental health issue, I mean, I think a conversation. If you feel comfortable holding that conversation, or maybe asking somebody else that's a friend or a colleague, because I don't want to keep harping back to self-care, but he or she needs to look after herself, and particularly if they're not in a right place, frame of mind, whether that's physically or mentally, technically they shouldn't be at work. And if the doctor signed them off, there's a reason for that. So having a conversation and maybe helping just through that perspective to put some through that conversation, put some perspective on. And just to say, you know, if somebody does open up to you, listening is such a powerful tool that we can all use, you know, because it's not about us. If somebody opens up a conversation about their mental health with us, it's about them. And, you know, we go back to, we're sort of taught to read and to write, but, you know, listening, we're not taught to listen effectively. So, you know, if someone does open up, you know, if you can, give them your time, and, you know, try not to interrupt, let them talk. But certainly in terms of this person, if they don't want to take the time off, I think, you know, additional support and signposting could be recommended or shared, or just to let them know that you're there if, you know, they need to talk. Yeah, without knowing the full details,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
a lot harder.
Well, I mean, we are at the end of our allotted time, but we've got 3 more questions, so I'll take those, but I won't take any more. So if you haven't put it in now, I'm sorry about that. The first one, not so much a question, but a statement. Apart from being branch health and safety officer, my day job is workplace wellbeing advisor and facilitate mental health awareness training to support having kind and supportive conversations rather than skipping straight to capability and conduct policies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's right. It's about what can you do before, isn't it? So, workplace reps, this is from Sharon, are under a considerable amount of stress following the pandemic with increased workloads and casework, and in higher education may be taking industrial action. How can workplace reps be better supported in the workplace to look after their mental health against this backdrop?
It's actually a good question, and another shameful plug for what we do at SpeakUp Mental Health. Because we're working quite closely with the trade union still, what we've been asked for is supporting reps' wellbeing. And so we've developed a short course. It's 3 hours that sort of looks at the issues that reps are facing. And it became an issue because unions were reporting to us that they were losing membership. They didn't want the reps to burn out. They wasn't seeing, in a lot of instances, much support coming from the individual workplaces and organisations. So a few months ago, Ian and I developed this course. It's kind of got a skeletal program, but it's very much influenced by the trade union and also the workplace, if depending on where it's being delivered. But do get in touch if that's something that you would find useful, because say we the trade union movement doesn't want to lose the knowledge and skills and experience that the reps have, whether they're health and safety reps, union learning reps. They want to retain that knowledge. And recognizing that you are feeling overwhelmed is such an important step. And once you've done that, hopefully, you can get some further training. We can start talking about it, and contact us.
Yeah. Okay, final question, because I do know people are leaving now, although you can, of course, watch this back later. And from Craig Stewart, familiar name. Hi there, Craig. I've joined late on, but has the importance of health and safety reps been covered? No, it hasn't, actually, Craig, to be honest. Health and safety reps can use their rights under SRSC regs to ensure that the employer is complying with their legal obligations on physical and mental health of employees. This is a positive, proactive approach that can lead to further discussions over health and mental wellbeing policies and practices. And so that's obviously something they're doing at GMB. I mean, anything else to mention about health and safety reps before we wrap up?
No, mental health is people different reps are taking it on. Sometimes for some unions it comes under sort of like the disabilities officers, disabilities forums, and for others it's more so sort of health and safety, the health and safety reps. No, I mean we haven't covered health and safety at all, have we? I mean, well, no, not really at all. But apologies for that. Maybe it's something for a future webinar for you and Janet to organise, Matt.
Yes, well, and I guess, I mean, this is the problem with talking about this. We could be here for 2 or 3 hours. Let's be honest. I think this discussion
easily
just started, and I feel really bad that I don't think we're giving the service to all the people here who, you know, have probably got so many questions. But we are in for an hour. We're 4 minutes over. So before we go, just to remind people, if you are in the Midlands on the 8th of April, we have our ULR forum. Please come down or join us digitally. And you can do that by emailing Michelle Kesterton at the regional office. I have put the address in earlier, but it's easy to find on the website. Janet, your ULR forum is?
22nd of April in Hull at the Holiday Inn Conference Centre, starting at 11:45, and the link's in the chat.
Brilliant. We have either on the 4th or the 5th, our next 4th or 5th of May, our next webinar with the Royal Literacy Fund, which I'm quite excited about, and that will be touching on mental health as well. So that's good there. Anything else to talk about? Thanks for coming. It's been a really, really engaging discussion. Nice to see you as always, Jane. I've done your mental health first aid training. I don't know if enjoy is the word, but I got a lot out from it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for everything you're doing in workplaces across the country. Oh, I tell you what I haven't mentioned. The gentleman in the northern region who wanted more engagement, there will be an officer starting in the North Tyne region soon, doing very similar to what I do in the Midlands and Janet does in Yorkshire. So watch this space. That's going to happen very soon. You know, hopefully that'll be extra support for people up there. You may even see them on a webinar one day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.